Today's video, I think, is going to be a short one. I don't know if, hopefully I don't drag on for too long talking about this topic, but the topic I want to discuss today is going to be this magical rainbow in uniforms topic of de-escalation. De-escalation is that thing that we're told police officers don't know how to do, and that police officers need more training on de-escalation. Or I especially when I post body camera videos, I love seeing this, where if a police officer yells at somebody or is cross with somebody or is stern with somebody, the comments are always, that officer doesn't know anything about de-escalation. Well, there's a couple of things, and I don't want to go on too far of a tangent here, but de-escalation does not mean kissing somebody's ass. Sometimes you have to be stern with people in order to de-escalate them, in order to get them to snap out of whatever it is that they are in. And there's also times where people are just kind of abusing your kindness, and if you continue to be really nice to them and make them feel warm and fuzzy, they're just going to continue to abuse you, and they're not going to go with the program or do what it is that you're trying to get them to do. But anyway, that was actually a bit of a tangent. I didn't mean to cover that at all today. The thing I wanted to talk about was one thing specifically that I get frustrated with when I am on a call with somebody who is either in mental health crisis or just someone that's incredibly upset, angry, whatever, and I need to talk to that person. I need to bring that person back down to a reasonable level so that we can have some kind of collaboration, right? The first problem that we have, and these kind of feed into each other, but the first thing that we have is usually this person's family. It's very common when we're dealing with people with mental illness, whether it be a kid with autism or somebody who has like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, explosive anger issues. This is a big one that we have this problem with the family. And trust me, I understand. I am human as well. Often the reason the police are called to a mental health disturbance isn't because the police are the people that can handle that problem. The reason the police are called is because the family is so frustrated and tired, and they just can't deal with this illness anymore. The frustrating part about it is, like, and I've had this happen so many times in so many different situations. I had one very recently where it was a 13-year-old boy who was threatening to kill himself and had run away from home. He didn't really run away, he just went around the block. But he was in a defiant mood. He didn't want to pick up whatever he had spilled on the floor, and his mom was yelling at him, telling him he's going to pick that stuff up, and he was refusing. He tried to leave the room, and she blocked the door so he couldn't leave the room. That's when he exploded, said, "I hate you, I'm going to kill myself," and he pushed by her, ran out of the house. The call that I got was actually domestic violence. The call that I got said that her son pushed her up against the wall and then ran out of the house. It also said that he has a history of mental illness, so they made it like a raised priority domestic violence call. I get there, mom and son are out in the driveway, and I walk up to them and I'm like, okay, this looks like it's probably the boy that I'm looking for. It looks like he's returned home. And I say, hey, what's going on? And mom looks at me, and this was like a nice family. These people look like they weren't rich, but they had enough money. It was a nice house in a historic neighborhood. And mom looks at me and she goes, well, he decided that he didn't want to clean up his mess, and when I confronted him, he did this, blah, blah, blah. And she's just like, Gah! Just attacking this boy through me. And I'm looking over at him, I'm like, okay, there was something about like threatening suicide, and I don't remember how I brought it up. She goes, oh yeah, he said that too, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, ma'am, let me talk to him. And I tried to talk to him, and anytime that I spoke, she would interrupt. Specifically, if I asked him a question, she would answer the question for him, to the point where I actually told her, I was like, hey, can you go inside for a minute? I'm going to stay out here and talk to him. That's something that happens a lot. People trying to answer for their family members. I also had another one the other day with, it was a caretaker, like a home health aide. This guy is, I don't know what the proper word for it is, but he's 65 years old and probably has the mentality of a 13-year-old. He wasn't Down syndrome, but he had some kind of, I don't know what the word is, and I don't want to offend people, but you know what I'm talking about. He was yelling and screaming that he wasn't going to let her in his apartment. She had to be in there because she was his home health aide. She ended up calling us. I get there and I'm talking to him. I go over the door, I get him to open the door, and I walk inside, and I start asking him some very basic questions. And the same thing happened when the medics came. We're all asking him some very basic questions, and the home health aide started answering for him. And I said, hey, you have to let him answer. And the reason for that is because this is a de-escalation technique. This is a way to get people to kind of snap out of their defiance mode and go into cooperation mode. Because they are, especially, they're in a fight with their family, and their family called the police. So now they're angry at the police because the police now represent the hatred and anger that they have for their family. And the family called us because they want us to solve this problem. The best way for us to do that is to kind of disassociate from the family, show that we're not one of them, that we are an independent body, that we're there to help and to get their brain out of that loop. I do that by asking very simple questions. Hey man, what's your first name? Oh, your name's John? John, nice to meet you. I'm Ben. How long have you lived here? 5 years. That's nice. Have you lived here by yourself the whole time? Yes. You're just a bunch of random freaking questions that have nothing to do with what it is that we're doing. I ask them if they've eaten today. If they did eat, what did they eat? Do they like that? Is that their favorite food? What's their favorite food? Did they have dessert afterwards? These are all like pleasant conversational type of things that people have a hard time resisting that conversation. I'm driving into the sun. This is killing it. But what that does is it relaxes them. It gets them out of that mind frame where they're just being super defiant, super angry, super hateful at the world. And once you get them talking about something that makes them happy, you can then transition into discussing why you're really there. I don't know if I can do this or not. So once you do that, then you can start to make some real headway. Because then I'll get into the questions like, hey, can you tell me what your mental health diagnosis is? When's the last time you went and saw your doctor? Are you prescribed medications? Are you taking your medications like you're supposed to? Once people start answering these questions, the simple questions about their name, their date of birth, their address, stuff like that, they're more willing to continue talking. It's a very popular interrogation technique. It's funny, I don't know if I retained this from reading this book, or if it's something that I naturally do, or if it's something I kind of picked up over the years. But there is a book out there. It's one of the best books I've ever read in my life. I read it when I was back in sales. When you're in sales, you have to read like motivational books constantly in order to keep from basically killing yourself, because sales jobs are brutal. And you're constantly reading books about how to convince people to your way of thinking, right? And the best book I've ever read along those terms is How to Win Friends and Influence People. People will often see that title and they think that it's some kind of self-help book for people who don't have confidence or something. How to win friends and influence people. It's actually a sales book. Is it Daniel Carnegie? It's Carnegie is definitely the last name of the author. It's been published forever. It's damn near, it's like the second most purchased book in the United States after the Bible, I believe. There's more copies in print than any other book in the United States other than the Bible. It's a fantastic book. It's about this guy who he's a fantastic salesman. And there's a chapter about, I don't know what it's called. I should have looked into this before I started talking, but it's something about get them to say yes. Because once you get somebody to say yes, they will continue to say yes, and then you will win them over to your way of thinking. I still remember the story that he told in order to demonstrate this point. He was selling some kind of industrial item that was going to be in factories, and he sold this item to this factory, and he was called in by plant manager or whoever it was saying, hey, this item gets too hot. When my guys touch it, they keep burning themselves, and I want my money back. I want you to come get this thing out of my shop. I'm going to go buy from this other company. And he knew that he had a superior product. It just didn't have the kind of heat shielding on it that people were accustomed to. So he went and asked the guy, well, tell me, what are the heat tolerances of this machine? And the guy said, well, they're blah, blah, blah. He said, okay. He says, and what is this thing heating up to? And he answered, well, it's heating up to this. And it's, 300 and something degrees, whatever the temperature is. He says, okay, if something was that temperature, you probably wouldn't put your hand on it, right? So he's not talking about the actual issue. He's kind of just getting this guy to talk and get him to agree that this thing was operating as it was supposed to. And also, okay, if you know it's hot, stop touching it. Does it work? Does it put out the parts that you're asking for and all this other stuff? The guy said, oh yes, it's a fine machine. It has higher output than any machine I've ever had before, blah, blah, blah. So Carnegie basically convinced him, well, the problem isn't the machine. The problem is your employees keep touching it, keep burning themselves. And the guy ended up winning the guy over to his point. It's actually along those same lines, where all you have to do is get people to start talking, and you can win them over to your side in many cases. But it's very important that when I'm talking to that individual that you called about, that you can't control, you have to remember that too. The reason I'm there is because everything that you've tried doesn't work. Or that person is just so angry with you, all their hate is focused towards you, that nothing you do is going to get through to them. But you're calling me because you need a second person in the room to take care of this for you. So when I'm in the room and I start asking these people these questions, there's a method to my madness. I don't care what their birthday is. I don't care what they had for lunch today. I don't care what their favorite food is. I want them to talk to me. I don't want you to talk to me, because frankly, you're the problem, if that makes sense. So that is a little tip on de-escalation from Officer Ben, and my perspective on, if you have one of these family members or somebody in your life that you have to call the police for regularly, when the police are interacting with that person and asking that person direct questions, you need to zip it. If you can't zip it, you need to leave the room. People get very mad at me when I ask them to leave the room. And I had one very recently too, where I asked somebody to leave the room. They got mad at me. They did leave the room, but when they came back and I had their loved one walking out to the cruiser with me, that person actually walked back over to me and apologized, said that I did a good job, that they were just mad at the situation, and that's why they lashed out at me. We get that a lot as well. People are just angry about the overall situation, and they take that out on us. But regardless, I think I've yammered on for more time than I expected to on this topic. So thank you for watching. I'll talk to you guys later.